Hi, good morning. I'm Kay Koplovitz. I'm the co-founder and managing director of Springboard Growth Capital, and I'm happy to say a trustee of the Paley Center for Media. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today. This morning's dialogue is Predicting Trends in 2017. That will be easy, but we have a great panel to do it today, what we can expect in the new year. As recent events have clearly indicated, predicting trends is not an easy thing to do, but today we are fortunate to have 5 great panelists doing this work for us. One is the Chief Digital Officer at a major television network. One is the Vice President of the country's largest multinational enterprise information technology distributor. That's a long title, my goodness. And one is CEO of a digital multi-channel video programming distributor. One is in multinational enterprise and information technologies, and one is the Officer of Advertising and Media Network. That places $37 billion of global media on behalf of its clients, including Amazon, Coca-Cola, and Johnson & Johnson. Moderating the panel will be our dear friend, Michael Kassan, an internationally recognized business strategist operating at the intersection of media, technology, entertainment, and advertising. He's the founder of MediaLink, a leading advisory and business development firm with principal offices in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And also thrilled to say that he is a member of the Paley Board of Governors. Welcome, Michael. Today, he and his esteemed panelists will discuss with you how to recognize the next big thing in the new era of media, where all companies are vying for the most elusive commodity on the planet, people's attention. Navigating this constantly morphing landscape requires agility and the ability to forecast the future. We'll look at the next 12 months of media, entertainment, marketing, and technology to forecast the most transformative advancements in disruptive trends for 2017. We're also delighted to have so many of our Media Council members here. In case you're not already a member, we welcome you to join this distinguished group so that you'll have access to special events and conversations like this one we're having today. Our next Paley Dialogue will be next week, December 15th, with Michael Roth of IPG and Keith Weed of Unilever, who will discuss the global shift in consumer behavior and how businesses need to think differently about developing a global content strategy. And on January 12th, we'll be back with the best of CES for those who went or those who weren't able to go this year. The panel, Joe Marchese of Fox Networks, John Miller of Advanced Capital, and Dana Woolman of Engadget. So January 12th, mark your calendars. I hope you can join us. To McKinsey, our long-term and valued official knowledge partner, we thank you for supporting this very special event. And now I'm honored to introduce Michael Kassan. Michael.
Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to make 2 trend predictions that are very up close and personal to where we are today. One prediction for 2017, the traffic between 55th Street and 57th Street is going to be really bad. And the second thing, apparently the 21 Club is back in style. So, I mean, it bodes well for the Paley Center to be approximate to the first restaurant. I don't know. I'm done now. That was it. In 1966, about 50 years ago, I read about this. Of course, I wasn't here yet, but Robert Kennedy quoted an ancient Chinese curse. That curse roughly translated to this: may you live in interesting times. For those of us in the business of captivating people and earning the attention of consumers, these are indeed interesting times. In fact, I would say we live in unprecedented times. Pick your headline. Every minute, there are 350,000 tweets posted, or roughly 500 million tweets per day. 62% of the people in the US are getting their news, mind you, from Facebook. Last year, 90% of people watched a second screen while they were watching TV. The epicenter of linear television, Monday Night Football, has declined in viewership close to 10% in 2016. And my favorite, a Microsoft study informed us recently that the human attention span has been eclipsed by the attention span of a goldfish, which is 9 seconds. The humans are now capable of only focusing for 8 seconds, and that's before the ADD kicks in. With all of this going on, is it any wonder that the marketing industry is so tumultuous at this moment? CMOs are losing sleep, trying to plot the path to the consumer, while the consumer is clicking unsubscribe, skip, and block with alarming speed. And why? If you believe advertiser perceptions, as much as 65% of the agency business could be in play during 2017. Not bad news for MediaLink, by the way, but keeps lots of folks up at night. Regardless of the true number, we're certainly looking at an interesting ride for the next 12 months. These are not times for the faint of heart, but hey, as Ken Auletta will tell you, I'm a Hamilton fan. And I believe that when you've got skin in the game, you stay in the game, and you don't get a win unless you play in the game. The people who will join us on stage today all have skin in the game. The landscape is precarious, no one is doubting that, but there is a way forward. There are compelling, provocative, and effective ways for brands to win the attentions of people and for media companies and agencies to win the attention of brands. Consider the facts. People like brands, they want information, they crave entertainment, and they increasingly rely on technology. The key is to leverage these assets in new and disruptive ways. The biggest wins, of course, will go to those who understand what the future holds, not just those who get to the future first. In my role, and at MediaLink, we're fortunate to serve as advisors and partners to some of the giants in this industry who occupy the intersection that Kay alluded to. For the next 35, 45 minutes, we're going to get the inside scoop. So what I'd like to do now is invite Jim and Henry and Arpita and Colin to join us on the stage. So guys, I'm going to start with one jump ball question, and I think based on the title and based on Kay's introduction, it'll be the right way to start. So 2015, people said that was finally the year of mobile. We were saying that in 13, 12, 11, and 10, but I think 15 was the year that people finally came to agree on that. 2016, I think we could argue people would have said it was the year of video. Video really came back with full force. If we're looking ahead to 2017, which we are, what's this going to be the year of? Arpita, do you want to take a first shot?
Sure. 2017 is going to be the year for data. Look, data is going to get fashionable again. This year, what we've seen is 2 significant false positives with a lot of predictions: Brexit and the US presidential elections. If you look at the trends, and I think taking a page from the chapter of such significant cultural milestones, we as companies and as marketers really need to get this right. We're not there yet, and it's absolutely indicative in terms of what we're seeing in the marketplace. So I would say data is going to be the new oil. It's going to get fashionable again, and we as companies better figure out what we need to do there.
You won't take this personally, I hope, Arpita, but several years ago, Rose Ryan, who at the time was running J. Walter Thompson, I had the opportunity to sit with her on a panel just like this, and I said, so Rose, would you say that, as the fashionistas might say, that data is the new black? And I wanted to not, you know.
It is going to be the new black. Look, I mean, it's the heavy word, and it's really, really difficult to get it done. I mean, there's systems, there are processes, there's technologies, and one of the things we're doing at Hewlett-Packard is essentially looking at that. And what do we need to do to get ahead in this new age? In this digital-first era, if we don't get data right, we will not be able to move forward.
The only thing I didn't tell you was the second part of that sentence, because when I said that to Rose,
yep,
she agreed initially and then came back at the end of the panel and said, but by the way, Michael, when the fashionistas say that gray is the new black this year or brown is the new black,
yep,
look around, people are still wearing black. So, you know, just adding that little sub story in. But the truth is, I was asked a question, and this is really another jump ball, but I was asked a question right after the election. What did I think the impact was on what had just happened for the advertising and marketing and media industry? And not in a macro way, but in terms of any takeaways. And I said two things. I said, first of all, people are going to question data a little more, because we just saw, I think the projection said 91% chance on the morning of the election that Hillary Clinton would be president, and based on the odds makers, and obviously that's not the way it played out. So people will question data more, and again, that translates to marketers. And I think the other thing that I said, probably missed by many, and I'm not sure I was right, I said it was also going to put into question celebrity endorsement. Celebrity endorsement turned out to be a negative, arguably, in the recent campaign. And I'm wondering how that would impact marketers. It's kind of off topic, but you know, marketers have historically relied on celebrity endorsement. I'm just curious. Jim, I mean, any thought there?
Well, it depends. I mean, again, so my view of it would be that we've just come through a period of data being something that the whole industry got their hands on and went kind of like crazy with, and they started using it and almost exclusively and relying on targeting without realizing there's another side to that, which is convincing somebody. And so I think the second half of last year, or this year, we saw a flight back towards premium and people understanding that, you know, it's not enough to just advertise in video when they're being viewed for 2 seconds or 3 seconds when people are flitting past things. It's actually about deep engagement. And you know, there were studies that came out this year from ComScore and Accenture and others that said that advertising in premium environments were 3 times as effective as not. So data is one half of the coin, premium is the other, and I would say from a celebrity endorsement standpoint, it's how credible, you know, is that endorsement?
Henry, as we're talking about this, and you know, I think it was in Forbes where I read recently that you know, advertisers, and I'm sure Arpita would agree with this as the brand advertiser on our panel this morning, are going to demand better ad products. They're going to demand clearer measurement. They're going to demand, you know, better, as they should, a better view of ROI. And somebody said this to me yesterday, actually. Does the industry realize what they've done with all the noise, and I'm not saying it's bad noise, but with all the noise about ROI and transparency and proof, they've allowed the finance guys to take over from the marketing folks. You know, I'm wondering how that all plays out from your perspective when, as Kay said, you're placing close to $40 billion of media on a global basis.
Well, that's a really good point, a really important point when you consider that our group manages $40 billion of our clients' funds. That's a lot of money that requires a degree of accountability, and you know, we know through discussions we're having with our CMO clients and their CEOs that linking the investment in marketing back to a business outcome is what everybody's really working towards, because that is really the holy grail that we're working towards to determine that. What we're finding is, to your point earlier, around, you know, the market is demanding more accountability, more ROI. I think it's important to sort of make the point that those demands are primarily, they need to be seen as corporation first, and then support partners as a secondary. And Arpita made the point, it's really difficult for corporations to work out their data strategy that will inform them on how to really grow their business or what is really working. So we're running into that opportunity. We're seeing a huge opportunity for clients who engage and invest in their own data infrastructure, but then more importantly, to do something with it. It's one thing to set up a great data structure and ecosystem, have it all working really well, but if you ignore the insights and the reality of what that data tells you, then it's a missed opportunity. And that change is what I think the industry really needs to think about, because that hasn't really started.
No, I think you're right. We're in the first or second inning on that one. Colin, let me come back to the goldfish. If our attention span is really 8 seconds versus that of a goldfish, that would seem to bode well for you guys, because at Xumo, it's kind of in your sweet spot to have that short form content. But where are we on the road, if you will, on the continuum to make certain that we're doing all we can from your perspective and from a marketer's perspective to get people to really engage with that short form content on that box on the wall? You know, I don't want to use the word television, but I will. But the box on the wall, it's okay, right?
Some honor.
Exactly. You know, or on their phones. I mean, we know they're doing it on PCs, but are we doing enough to get that movement?
Do you know that? I mean, it's interesting. We obviously come from. We started with an online advertising data-centric approach to what we were doing. In fact, we come from an online advertising business at Xumo. We thought, well, let's take some of those techniques around data, observing user behavior, trying to understand how people consume advertising, and apply that into television. And that was sort of one of the main theses of what we do. And it's interesting. I actually want a little story, if I may go back a little bit. I used to be a young analyst at Capital One ages ago doing credit risk modeling, bizarrely enough.
I used to be a young lawyer. I'm not that.
And I say the word young now. That dates me, no? But in all the thousands of pieces of data we had, I'm trying to sort of model people's credit worthiness. There were actually only 4 things that mattered. One of the biggest indicators of somebody's credit worthiness was whether they checked the "I want a cash advance on my credit card," out of every other thing that you could learn about them. And I think what it goes to is like this world of data it's incredible. There's so much happening. There's so much data available now. Everybody's into it, but it does come back down. There's very few things that still really matter, and we're searching for them. We have an idea. We use huge amount. We track people's behavior. We observe how they change channels, how long they stay engaged. We adapt programming on the fly, really, to try and take into account. But it's trying to find those few pieces of data that mattered is still what we're searching for.
Jim, I talked about Monday Night Football and what appeared to be maybe election-driven diversion of attention. Not sure it's coming back all the way, but some of the indication is that the viewing numbers are going up. You guys just kind of, with your all access plan with the NFL, did something kind of revolutionary. Can you chat about that a little in terms of the consumer demand and talk a little bit about the all access?
So there's essentially different tiers of ways to watch CBS programming online. There's CBS.com, which is free and it's ad supported and it's the past 5 episodes. For $5.99 a month, you get every episode we've ever made, back to I Love Lucy.
Can I correct you for 1 second, Jim? Because it's a pet peeve of mine. It's actually not free. Right. And it actually goes to the heart of the business that I grew up in and one of the changes. So
non-subscription, how about that?
Well, but because remember, the payment for that is the eyes and the ears. It's the ability or the willingness to watch the commercial message that's being delivered. So we are, as a consumer, paying for it. We're paying for it with attention, not with money. And I just always try to make that distinction.
A great example is that between the tiers is for $5.99 a month, you still see ads. And it's 75% of the load you would get on the completely free version, but in $9.99 a month for completely commercial free. So we had all the shows. The only one we didn't have, and the one thing that we have that we're the first to do, I still don't think it's anywhere else, is you can actually watch live CBS programming in your metro market. So we have 95% of the country covered with this now. It's basically geo-fenced, and you can watch, if you're in San Francisco, you can watch Channel 5. If you're in LA, you can watch Channel 2. The only thing we didn't have was the NFL until this past week. We just announced that we had reached an agreement finally with the NFL. So you can watch CBS NFL games through, again, almost any device. It's still not a smartphone, which is actually owned by Verizon at this time, but any other device, you're able to watch the NFL with us. And yeah, I mean, it was significant. The same way we're creating new original programming now for CBS All Access. So we'll have the Good Wife spinoff in February. It's called The Good Fight. We just announced February 15th or 19th. And then we're making the new Star Trek for online only. And then, so I view the NFL as that's an amazing new show.
But the Star Trek is only going to be, am I right? Star Trek isn't going to be available
It's going to premiere on broadcast, which is something that we can do to promote it that other online only channels couldn't do. But yeah, it's being made
for an over the top.
In a super premium way. It's an expensive version. It's There's no ratings, so it's going to be different potentially that way. And so yeah, it's for CBS All Access the way that we make shows on Showtime that don't show up on CBS proper. They're on CBS All Access.
This is a question actually for Henry and Arpita to kind of bat back and forth. Martin Sorrell a couple of years ago talked about the transition from Mad Men to Math Men. And we just came through a rather large media review analysis for AT&T. And as you know, I think AT&T made a decision to rebundle and create a new bundle. And so, Henry, this bodes well for you because while I think you're a very good-looking guy, we have this chart that shows that you and Don Draper are starting to look more alike. So, I mean, I don't know, but if I were you, I'd think that's pretty good. There's a new bundle in town. That new bundle is bringing media and creative back together. And again, the personification of it was at AT&T, where the Hearts and Science and BBDO team have now created one P&L, one approach, and the reason for it, at least the way we articulated it with the AT&T client, was putting data at the center, back to what you were saying, Arpita, because the data is going to inform and help you make decisioning in creative as well in media. How does that bode for you guys? I mean, you're in the midst of just reimagining your media partnerships, and you're reimagining them every day, Henry, in the real world. So either one, I mean, do you think that new model is where we're going?
Absolutely. And I think it's not a choice. We just have to get there. So I think to your point about the new bundle, we recently did that. And I think we made a hard pivot towards a new digital model from a marketing perspective, looking at the entire agency ecosystem, and I'm sure Henry, you're probably seeing that in your industry too, looking at all of our partners and seeing exactly how they play together. But I would say one thing that with the whole premise of data at the center, the bundle actually doesn't stop just with the agency. The bundle actually extends into the marketer or the brand side. Because unless the bundle can be completely seamless, we're not going to be able to move to this new digital-first model. What we've seen, and there have been instances where you expect that the agency is going to rebundle, bring in all of these competencies, and you make no change on the brand or the marketing side. And guess what? It doesn't work.
And are you saying no change from the way you approach the business? Are you talking about the talent you need? Are you talking about the organizational structure? Where do you think the change has to be on your side?
All of the above. All of the above. I think because it is definitely a process change, and we're in the midst of it. It's painful, because people are not used to this new way of working.
Fortunately, you've allowed us to share some of your pain, so I know.
Yeah. So you guys are like you were in the pain with us. I think it is all of those, because look, this is a cultural shift. It's not just a business model shift. It's a shift in terms of people, technology platforms, processes, how everybody comes together, and mindset. And you have to have willingness on both sides, on the agency partner side, as well as internally, to really make that shift. So I'm curious to see what you have to say and what your experience has been.
I guess I would start by saying it's actually not a new model. It's the old model with a secret new ingredient, which is data. Mm-hmm. And how that is blended into this model is really the key to whether it works or not. It's great to have a view or a hypothesis that the whole marketplace is working around, and that is if I as an organisation bring data into the way in which we market, create products, manage our customer relationships, and then market to all of those, then the theory is that I will get a better return on my investment, whether it's marketing or product or my team, mm-hmm. whatever that is. There is a way to link a benefit. But the greatest vision and strategy is nothing unless it's able to be executed. Yeah. And what we are finding, and the roadblocks we're now encountering, are not so much willingness from our clients or ourselves to engage, but it's how do we ensure that process goes right through the entire ecosystem of comms and marketing. And where we're finding some really interesting challenges, which will allow us to disrupt, is when we get to putting money into the market. And I'll give you the simple and the easiest example of this is what we're seeing through data and the insights of data is that to optimise a return through marketing, you need to consistently and on an ongoing basis change what you are doing in the market, because the consumer, us, is highly volatile. We're not really loyal in terms of how we consume media, and we'll take it anywhere we can get that. So if you overlay that with how the majority of the marketplace globally thinks about their marketing, most clients lay down their marketing for a long period of time and don't change a lot of it on an ongoing basis. And part of that is because of how the market works in big markets like the US. The upfront is a really good way to not optimise your activity because you lay down for a whole year. So it's great to set up a data infrastructure, but what we're working towards is actually rewriting the rules on how we engage with the media to create and introduce flexibility and movement within that.
So, Colin,
if I just may, I mean, we have a slightly different, and you folks represent enormous organizations that have had to adapt with, in culture. We've had the benefit of starting from a blank sheet of paper a few years ago, and we're like a startup, which is, we're not quite a startup anymore, but we wired in, by observing what the requirement was in the industry, full transparency on data, right into our DNA right from the get-go. It was quite interesting getting into the television industry, which is notoriously sort of close-guarded with data, and coming from the online advertising industry where data is shared and passes through ecosystems very rapidly. So we've started in the TV industry with that basis. And it's interesting how that's wired our culture with this sharing and transparency as the sort of the base foundation, rather than starting with everything to protect and having to back into it.
well, but one could argue, and I had this conversation yesterday. We did a chat with a financial sponsor, a group of bankers on trends in media, and we were talking about exactly that and how should the networks be complacent based on the 2016 upfront numbers? Should everybody say, well, thank God we're back to where broadcast television is, in a growth mode at that level? And the conversation really focused on the transparency issue and the measurement issue, and the overarching agreement we came to amongst this group of people yesterday was, don't get complacent if you're a TV network, because 2016 may turn out to be aberrational in terms of the way the money moved because of the transparency and the trust and all the stuff that's going on the fringe. And maybe in 2017 we're going to see a little more nervousness. But to Jim's point, premium content.
Well, and more data was offered to advertisers during the upfront this year than was utilized. So it wasn't only, it's not that the networks were complacent on that front or relying, and a lot of the great upfront this year was because of how expensive scatter was coming into that year, and people wanted to have better deals for something very scarce, which is premium, super engaged, audiences, which are more and more important in the age of declining attention spans. So it's super rare. It's the most effective thing, and so you add data to that, you're in a great situation. But in my world, in the online world, I love being from Silicon Valley and saying scatter and stuff.
It's a big
but
word
in
for
the
a
online
12-year-old.
world, you've seen, again, sometimes some of the extremes. 85 cents of every new dollar coming into the space was going just to Google and Facebook, which were essentially direct response environments. And so you did see things like Procter & Gamble say, we're going to do all programmatic. And then a little while later, no, we're going away from programmatic. We're going back to video. And so this year, internet advertising is growing 19% for 17, 19%. Long form video is projected to grow 54%. So there is an awareness that there needs to be a happy medium between these new tools and the context, the environment you're going to advertise in.
Let me try to stick to a script for once. We're here to talk about predictions for 2017. I talked about the disruption. Let's talk about the disintermediation, because I think that is a big story in the coming year. But shockingly, I'm not going to talk about the disintermediation, thankfully, Henry, for you, of the media specialist, of the media agency. I'm going to talk about, or ask the question about, what do you guys think will happen to the creative agencies in 2017 and forward? Because if you look at the landscape, everybody is a publisher now. Brands want to be publishers. Content studios are being created within networks. NBC's got one. I'm sure CBS has an offering in the same way. ESPN's done it for years. You go down the list. And then let's not forget the Vices and the Voxes and the Awesomeness and just go down that list. Every one of those companies are now an agency. They talk about their agency model. Who are they going after? They're going after McCann Erickson and J. Walter Thompson. They're not going after Mediabrands. I mean, right? They're doing creative. Yeah. How's that going to play out? And from your perspective, Arpita, from anyone's perspective, because you're all in that game, you're doing it. And again, you're going to create content because the clients are saying, we want 3 things around content. This is a long question, I know, but they want creation, distribution, and shockingly, monetization of content. Yeah. So who's going to create it? Where's it going to come from? And
everybody's creating it. There is no, it's not an exclusive club. Content it's there for the taking. You know, we're a media and comms network, and we're producing content, and that's the difference. Are we talking about creative, or are we talking about content? Because the two are different, and I think some of the larger creative agency networks are getting their heads around the difference between being a creative agency and being a content agency, and going about and designing messages that are effective and workable on any platform. And that is a mind shift that the creative agencies are working through, and it challenges existing business models and how they've become what they are. The media are doing the same thing and bundling content to either add value or to engage more effectively. Clients, more and more so now, need to think content, because content creates attention, and attention converts into engagement. And you know, one of the things that you asked earlier, what will 2017 be the year of? It will be the year of content, because content is ultimately where the rubber hits the road, and where the human being and a brand or a service have an opportunity to determine whether they like each other. That's the point of it.
And I know that we're going to lose Arpita at some point before we can open up for questions, so I want to ask one question, because I know, actually, if HPE was really that good, what you could just do is like, you could just...
Just, we're doing this.
Exactly.
Yes.
We'll spend a lot of time on this at CES in a few weeks, but let's talk quickly, before we lose Arpita, about VR and AR. You know, in July, Pokemon Go came out, and it was the rage, and the world was changing, and Niantic was, you know, the hottest company on the planet. And then, you know, a month later, everyone said, well, it's dying. You know, it's yesterday's news. But every brand, every person we talk with, and we just came back. In fact, if you guys get to enjoy Michael Roth and Keith Weed next week, which I would recommend you do if you're in town. We came back last week from Israel on a 4-day technology mission with the Unilever team, and Keith was obviously leading that. And we spent more time on VR and AR than we did on anything else in Israel, just meeting with the new technologies and whatnot. Is this the year of that? What's going to happen from your perspective, and how are you looking at it, Arpita? And how's that playing for, you know, the rest of you?
Yeah, so I think it goes to, you know, the previous conversation around content, and you know, the forms of content that we're seeing and the innovation around it. I think VR and AR have taken a very central role as new innovations in this space, and frankly, we're still trying to figure it out. And I think this is where, as marketers, as brands, we need to figure out, is there a role that AR and VR have to play in an authentic way in your overall communications? Or is it one of those shiny objects that everybody's, you know, chasing? From a technology marketer standpoint, you know, I see the role of AR or VR in, you know, in a very central way, where you might actually have a technology demonstration that you want to do. It could be event-based. Those are some of the areas that we're looking at. And look, HPE, we actually have technologies that do that. So we're experimenting with that. Again, I think we make a distinction in terms of what are the technologies you want to pilot with and what do you want to scale. We're really at the pilot stage now with these two technologies. I don't think it is something that we've seen is at a scalable area, not yet. Probably partly because of the maturity of the industry and partly where does it fit in the overall narrative or storytelling, or is this a forced thing? But we absolutely need to innovate, and we're looking into that.
Colin?
There was an expression, I hope I get it right, and it's Bill Gates famously said one time, no new thing is as big as you think it's going to be in the first 5 years, and it's always bigger than you thought it was going to be in the second 5. And I think VR is in the same thing. I think in the first 5 years, it's going to be amazing, but there's not really a lot of good stuff in that ecosystem yet. I think it's also like when digital advertising first showed up, people took TV ads and stuck them in digital going, that's digital. Oh, wait a minute, you can do a lot more, it's interactive. And it took a while before the industry had to adapt how they bought, how they using it. So I think it's got to go through, my forecast is it's 2 more years before VR AR is really where it's going to be.
But it won't be Pokemon Go, right? It'll be...
No, I just don't know. I'm sitting in my living room with my headset on, and my missus thinks I look like an idiot. So
again, I want to be respectful. We have Arpita to go, so I want to let you go and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do now, and it's unfortunate because we could spend another hour at least chatting, but we do have a limited time. So what I want to do is open it up for questions from the audience for a few minutes. Yes? There's a microphone coming.
Thank you. I'm Betty Cohen. There was this. I just heard the head of ad product for Facebook yesterday refuse to change the whole ethos of the company around transparency. They said that here they are, one of the major platforms for reaching people and for ad spend. And at the same time, he said, we're built on a sense of privacy. It's core to our product, and so therefore he was not promising a lot more transparency with Facebook. And so I'm wondering, since there was this discussion about the transparency of CBS, and you're saying you're offering more than that was used, here's Facebook, which I would think is much more huge than CBS in terms of attracting ad dollars. How are you going to deal with the fact that such a major player really doesn't really intend to get all that deep on transparency for all the data that you might want to have?
Well, I would kind of love to hear a debate between Henry and no disrespect, Colin, but I'd like to hear a debate between Henry and Jim on that one. But because I did read this morning in one of the news updates that from a WPP perspective, Martin Sorrell came out and said that Google is their largest partner. Facebook is about to surpass 21st Century Fox as their second largest partner. So if you look at that, the largest buyer of media in the world, their 2 top partners at the rate of $4+ billion and probably $2 billion in spend, as Martin also likes to say, gets to grade their own homework. So,
That's a good point. I think Martin's comments are a mathematical coincidence because their portfolio of clients and the profile within the sector, it is what it is. It's a sort of it's an organic situation. I think it's a really important question, and it highlights a really interesting point that there is a big organisation like Facebook using privacy as I guess a foil for transparency, which, in my view, the two are very different. Privacy is privacy, and transparency is a completely different proposition. And what the industry is debating with Facebook is not really about Facebook divulging any information that is private based on a Facebook user and the platform. 3-4 years ago, the market was dealing with a similar type of situation with Google. And Google was in a commanding position. It still is. I would argue it's in an even more commanding position because it actually stopped and listened to the market and worked with the market and changed their views on certain things. Measurement and metrics, which is really what underpins transparency, is a big area. I would expect that, and I would assume Facebook are hearing from most of people like myself that a more open and more collaborative approach to measurement and transparency is going to be a mandatory. Otherwise, they will be disappointed in the type of growth they get moving forward. And that would be my sense.
So we'll get a look into the walled garden?
I think it's going to be, it's inevitable. It has to happen. It happened with Google, and I would say Google is the front door to most people's digital experience. So if Google have been able to make it work, and it hasn't thwarted their growth, they get bigger and bigger every day. So I would expect the walled garden will crack at some point.
Colin, Jim?
I just think it's very different than our situation. Facebook and Google are platforms, and people are putting, where people are scrolling, essentially, like channel surfing that we used to do, to find the thing they want to engage in. We're the content on the other side of that they do go engage in, and so to the extent that they are a data-targeted situation, they are a direct response situation for the most part. I think they do have an incentive to work with advertisers because it's all about that conversion. Whereas we have 98% ad completion rates on our. It's just a very different situation. I don't know what more data. I mean, we are as transparent as possible with our advertisers. So,
I think it's a great. I think Henry's point is great. Data. People tend to look at data as a binary thing. Either you have data or you don't, and they're saying, well, you can't have data because it's may have issues with my privacy. But I think what the advertising market says, just show me view-through rates and completion rates. We'd love to see all the data that's there, but look, let's start with something. And I think it's just this complete no or yes. I think there's shades of grey in between that need to be explored. And I think that will happen.
By the way, just to reiterate on this point, the notion of data being all there is, and then you leave it go, and then you're all of a sudden going to convert. I mean, if you talk to the people at CNET, which we own, which is still the largest publisher in technology, we've been working with advertisers intimately to track all the way through to conversion without knowing exactly what city these people are from or who their husbands or wives are, or where they went to college. That information only gets you so far that I know somebody before I need to then do something to convince them and then convert them. And that is not new. Again, we've been doing it for 20 years at CNET.
So does Facebook have something to hide? Because they can see that Google's figured this out. What's taking them so long?
I think they're in a unique position at the moment in that they are effectively the social monopoly. They sort of own that territory.
Or part of the duopoly.
Or part of a sort of broader digital duopoly. I think it's a bit of time is required for Facebook to realise that in any given client's marketing activity, Facebook represents a very small share of that, a very small minority, 4 to 8% on average for multinational advertisers. So I think as an industry, we do ourselves a disservice sometimes by only talking about Google and Facebook because they're so dominant and they're so big. But for most advertisers, they're actually the small part of their overall, with a huge impact and with a lot of potential, but it's still only a small piece. So what we do within an agency is we orchestrate the multiple channels, and ultimately we work towards getting one single metric for what that campaign is doing. So Facebook, Google, CBS, newspaper companies, radio, et cetera, outdoor, they're all part of a campaign that is integrated, and that's what we're measuring. And in time, we believe we're going to get there.
Kay, did you have a question?
Hi, I just wanted to follow up on that question a bit because if everybody else is competing for the 20% of the market that Google and Facebook are not taking in, yeah, that's a small piece of territory for people to be fighting over. Your content is part of what is driving that. My question is, do you see a third party emerging that has sort of competes with Google and Facebook, and how much does predictive analytics play a part in that? Being able to not only read what people did and search them on the internet and et cetera, but predict with data what people will want to have as the message, whether that's the content message or the advertising message or the marketing message. I'm just wondering, do you see anything on the horizon that challenges it?
It's here now. Programmatic activity is effectively that. Inventory, media inventory, data, and a product or a service that's looking for a consumer to engage with goes through that process. So there is a degree of predictive analytics built into a programmatic process. As to the remaining 20%, it's 20% of 40%. So it's actually, call it 7 to 8% of the total market. That's a small chunk of the market for too many people to be fighting over. I think there's a huge opportunity for the television sector to find a way to work together to create a macro audience platform, and that's something that may actually be what salvages the television industry and propels real growth as opposed to inflation-based growth. But you could also argue platforms like Snapchat, who own the millennial generation, have a lot to play for as well.
But can't seem to own the advertisers.
But because the issue is, look, people talk about 18 to 34-year-olds not watching as much television, they're going to Snapchat and others. They were never more than a single-digit percentage of television viewing, even when Gen X was growing up. Because in their stage of life, they're communicating, they're out. And so trying to only target people on platforms where they're communicating, which is not an optimal advertising environment, would have been like everyone trying to optimize around the telephone as a way to stick ads in there as people were talking with their girlfriends in the 80s.
There were times when I was talking to my girlfriend that I wanted that.
Right?
I needed a commercial break.
Instead of
where were you when I needed you?
I know, which was on print and places where people were engaged when they weren't on the phone. And so I just think when these new platforms come along, it very quickly turns into, oh, we got to figure out how to do that. And frankly, money goes in there without being very well understood what that money is doing.
Just because we're on the record, I didn't have a girlfriend in the 80s. I was married. I meant the 70s. I meant the 70s, okay?
I had the phone cord
we are
through
on the record,
my
just
bedroom
so
door.
Let the record reflect. Yes, Marcus.
Marcus from AppNexus. So I think it's interesting to use the term audience platform. If you look at traditional TV, you're producing content, you're acquiring an audience, you're monetizing that audience, you're engaging that audience. But more and more, I think from a technology perspective, we're seeing companies like Amazon, Walmart, like this concept of an audience is not just they're viewing an ad-supported environment. Instead, they're buying things, they're going to stores. So, it's easy to look at like a Snapchat and say, well, they're going to be the next big platform. But we've got a lot of people going after the audience from a completely different perspective. What's your point of view on that?
Well, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, there is the traditional players as they understood their consumer, and everybody thinks about what the 18 to 30-year-old is doing because that's what the market is going to be years from now. But there are these traditional players that have immense amounts of, people, even traditional traffic coming in through their retail stores that understand those customers really well, that are building massive digital capabilities. I mean, the Walmart example is these guys, I mean, they've got incredible operation, how they slice and dice, and then how they can commercialize that. And even if you look at retail stores like Best Buy and how they use shelf space and how they market that to to products, I don't want to speak for them, but how they make more money out of retailing shelf space than they do out of selling their products. So there's worlds outside of the traditional sort of Snapchats and Facebooks, which are worth taking paying some attention to. I think it's attention. You said it's time, it's engagement, right? That's the commodity. Is if I've got so many choices, which is the one I'm going to spend a few hours with, and I trust, and you know, I'm going to take my lead from. That's where the gravitational pull is.
Sorry, that's a second question, but it's a little bit different. Mentioning trust, what do we think about lies and spies in terms of the content that people receive in the various ways that they receive it today? How is that going to certainly influence this election? And how do you think it'll influence people's perception? Do people care if something is true or not true? Do we have spies making up things in terms of content? And how it's distributed? I think it's an interesting. We're going to face it more and more.
But that's so as a South African commenting on the U.S. political system, I've got to take my view with a pinch of salt always. But I think it's just like this: the world is tilting on its axis a little bit in terms of what's defined as traditional media and emerging media. Consumers look at Facebook for their news, and they see it in a feed and an article coming from big corporation A, and little blog and so is presented in exactly the same. It looks, the text, the font size is the same, so there must be therefore somehow similar. I think the world's going to sort it out. I don't think it's going to just keep going like that. But yeah, it's a fascinating area.
I think we have time for one more question.
Simon Applebaum from Tomorrow Will Be Televised on Blog Talk Radio. Getting back to predictions, it looks like we will start next year with half the American public or more with a smart television set or a smart device like Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast, with the ability to watch Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, etc. over the TV set.
CBS All Access.
CBS All Access too, yes. I was going to say that before you jumped in, Jim.
CBSN.
And also with the ability to use apps. It was over a year and a half ago that Tim Cook, the head of Apple, said the future of TV is apps. And now with Apple TV, you've got 8,000 plus apps. Quarter of them are games. You can order Airbnb. You can use Zillow. You can order a pizza from Papa John's. Entertainment and sports tickets from StubHub. Do Twitter. Where are we going with smart sets and devices? How capable are these sets going to get? And are we going to see more things like the ability to transact business through the TV set, virtual reality on the TV set, choose your own destination, or if you're watching a dramatic program, the way the show goes?
Great question.
That was serious.
I think you just answered it.
Yeah. We're done here.
We had time for one question.
You know,
got
exactly.
7. That was good.
The data point I would give you is that it is for our OTT products, so CBS All Access and CBS, that's one. CBSN, which we launched 2 years ago, which is our 24/7 digital news network, which has been on fire this year. It's the #1 news app on a Roku and Apple TV. We have about 35% of the audience, total users, are through those devices, but it's 60 or 70% of the total volume of usage. So what the lesson to us is best screen available. You know, they will put that on. We view all these different screens. We view it as a multi-platform company at this point. And Les Moonves said at an analyst conference recently, we're no longer just a television network. We're a multi-platform company delivering content to all these devices. And that's how I view OTT, which could eventually just be an app slung up from your phone onto the screen. I mean, it doesn't matter how you're getting there. It matters, you know, what you want to watch, where you are at that moment. So we absolutely try to take that agnostic approach. But people are consuming it there.
It's all content. So whether you're watching a Netflix exclusive show or something from the CBS platform, it's just content. The one thing that won't change is there's only 24 hours in any single day. And
that wasn't the case when I was a lawyer.
That's right. Well, depending on time zone. But ultimately, the content that engages most will resonate. It leads to continuing and further fragmentation, which is going to put pressure on the existing and traditional platforms and companies that are competing. And we're sort of going through a content Darwinian theory where the strongest will not be the only ones that survive, but those that are most adaptable. So I guess the thing we're looking at as Mediabrands is how the biggest are adapting, because they have the most to lose, but also the most to gain, because they have a head start. But it comes back. your question sort of highlighted that it's really all about content.
I think on that note, we do have to come to an end. I want to be respectful of people's days, and I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank all of you guys and Arpita as well for sharing some of your thinking this morning. Thank you.